All right. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute here. Uh, Good morning. Good morning. So, yesterday we talked about social contagion. I'm just going to kind of dig right into this. If you might notice, I'm wearing the same shirt today, and that's a conscious choice because I think I might pull yesterday and today's episodes down and edit them together into one video and republish that later as a standalone. But so yesterday we covered, we spent a lot of time on definition of terms because for the purposes of this conversation, there's a lot of, shall we say, wiggle room in interpretation. And I hope that you guys took a lot away from that because I talked about some pretty important concepts. And just to kind of quickly summarize, the big three are social contagion, social engineering, and social credit score. Social contagion is an idea that spreads through people, is communicated and is adopted by people. Social credit score is a system by which your personal opinions, politics, beliefs, and associations will be used to affect your ability to get a job, to get a credit rating, to get a line of credit, to buy a house or to buy a car, or even to rent things, homes, automobiles, etc. And then what was the last one? Social engineering is a term that comes to us from the hacker community, where basically you con somebody into taking a predictable action. And so that I want that to bring you all around to the conversation we're going to have. Now, currently, we have several large social contagions that are absolutely devastating to the country, the population, and the world at large. Because remember, the social media, the whole social media experience is a global experience. That is the value and the danger of social media generally. Right? I mean, this show, I'm just a little old redneck in somewhere in the middle of Georgia, and I have viewers in Korea and Afghanistan and the UK, all over Europe. I have viewers all over the place, and we have some very good conversations in the chats and the comments, etc. And the problem is global. The problems are so significant. For example, the gender confusion and the whole LGBT movement problem in China has gotten so far out of control, or had gotten so far out of control in the wake of the one-child policy in China, and China in support of the one-child policy. Okay, hold on, getting a little scattered here. So, years ago, China had the one-child policy. And most of you should know what that is. Now, in support of the activity of the one-child policy, China adopted a mechanism of social engineering to increase the popularity of the feminization of men, to lower birth rates, right? The stated explicit intent of feminizing the men and exploring highly feminized men in pop culture. Pop icons, Chinese pop icons would be men wearing effeminizing makeup, and doing more emotional interest type music. You see it all through the cartoons and the media that came out of China throughout the 90s and early 2000s, and it became a serious problem for China. They actually went into negative birth rate decline problem, and have gone completely the other way in the last 10 years or so. China has started social engineering away the feminization of men because of the immediate threat to population growth and the population sustainability. And of course, with the Chinese model, you have to understand that we're talking about the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party is contagious to the rule of Mao Zedong. Right? That's a very important piece of the overall understanding. It is as if after the death of Adolf Hitler, the Nazi Party continued uninterrupted as a political party in power in Germany. That is the intellectual equivalent, I want you to understand, of what the Chinese Communist Party is. They are the same party that was the party of Mao Zedong, and they are still the ruling party in China, and unless some drastic things change, will continue to be so. By the way, one of the ways they've managed to maintain that power despite the evils of that government is a completely disarmed populace. Now, that said, it is not unreasonable to look at what China is doing in regard to social engineering and the social contagion, and be aware that there's a lesson to be learned there. They engaged in intentional social engineering, which had a significant harmful result for the Chinese people, and more importantly, to their perspective, for the Chinese government. Because it's a communist country, there is the pension system, the old age care system, relies very, very heavily on a specific rate of growth of the lower age brackets into the labor pool, because there's constantly, if your old people stay alive longer, and in order to deal with the cost of that, you need more people in the labor force, then you have more and more old people getting older and older. Your cost of maintaining the system that keeps those people alive increases, which means that the need to have more and more people in the labor force also increases. And China has created a sort of communist positive feedback loop, where higher costs means higher need for labor, and a suddenly bottoming out population replacement rate as a result of previous social engineering has had markedly and demonstrably deleterious effects, which require a solution. The solution to their social engineering problem, to their understanding, is more social engineering, but social engineering in the other direction. Today, in America, we have a very serious problem with social engineering getting out of control at this, and it has become a matter of social contagion. So, here's where these things tie together. A social contagion, like to name a few, right now in America, we have the social contagion of transgenderism, creating early onset gender dysphoria, which is being treated with dangerous and harmful medical malpractice. Let's be clear. Let's be very, very clear on that. The mutilation of prepubescent children, the mutilation of the genitalia of prepubescent children to serve a fanatical political and pseudo-religious ideology, that's not a health choice. That is medical malpractice by definition. Right? First, a doctor who swore to first do no harm is actively removing healthy tissue from young children. This is not complicated. It's like the thing I said about abortion the other day. We don't need to ban abortion. We just need to enforce the law, because murder is already a crime. That's not complicated. Right? If one murders a pregnant woman, you will be charged with 2 counts of murder. If you shoot a pregnant woman, she survives and the baby does not, you will be charged with a count of murder. Now, if you put her on an operating table and go in there with a shop vac to remove her child, to leave it to suffer and die, you have committed the same crime. And that's another social contagion and another piece of social engineering that's coming to us from authoritarian leftists, is this idea that babies aren't people. It's a very common practice of the left. It's the same way that slavery was justified. It's the same way that the Holocaust was justified, right? The argument by the authoritarian collectivist left is always X class of person equals not person, right? In Germany, the Jews weren't people. In the Democrat-controlled South, blacks weren't people. In America today, babies aren't people. And that is a concept that is transmitted intentionally. Right? That's where you get the social engineering part. Planned Parenthood is engaged in not only money laundering for the Democrat Party, but they're actively engaged in the social engineering and intentional activity of eugenics. That is not an analytical conclusion drawn from examining the data surrounding the activities of Planned Parenthood. One could come to that conclusion in that way, but one needn't do so. Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, made it very clear that that was the explicit objective of the organization, to eradicate blacks in America. That's why Planned Parenthood was founded, and that's what they're there for. So we look at modern social engineering and social contagion. The transgenderism, that ideology is a social contagion. It is spread on social media there's engagement, right? There's positive engagement. And I mean positive engagement in the mechanism of it. People who go on to social media and talk about being transgender, they're exposed to affirming information, and the countervailing arguments are explicitly centered away from them. There are many, many people out there right now who went through transition, chose to detransition because they realized the mistake they had made, and are now suffering extraordinarily because of the harm that was done to their health by the transition process. Those people are getting out there and making videos and telling their stories, and those stories are being censored away. So if you're an 11-year-old girl who is suddenly uncomfortable wearing a bra, or suddenly disquieted by the use of feminine hygiene products, and think the world would be easier if I were a boy and didn't have to deal with these things, you get on the phone that your parents never should have bought you because you're an 11-year-old child, right? Parents, stop that shit right there. Right? The only thing you can do worse than giving your child a completely unrestricted and unsupervised electronic access to the internet, the only thing you can do that is a greater harm-causing act of child abuse is to put them in a public school. But you got your little girl gets onto TikTok and says that she thinks she's a boy, and all of a sudden it's all sunshine and roses and slay queen and yes ma'am and get it, or yes sir rather, get it, and people giving advice on here's how you go through gender transition without your parents' consent. They're all about consent until it's inconvenient. Don't ever forget that. And, for example, there was we covered this before, and I'm just going to touch it again real quick. TikTok is giving teen girls Tourette's-like tics. Doctors call it a pandemic. We don't need to go into this article in depth. We've covered this by itself on a previous show. But physicians at hospitals all over the world are reporting a bizarre phenomenon that's seen a rapid rise in teenage girls developing tics, physical twitches, which doctors believe may have been derived from TikTok. There's a whole genre of video on TikTok where people go on to talk about their mental health issues, and many of them are clearly fabricated. I mean, clearly fabricated. There's a whole subgenre of people who claim to have multiple personality disorder, and they go on TikTok and they perform the several characters that they've designed to represent their multiple personalities. And any psychologist or psychiatrist will tell you that is not how multiple personality works. It's not some cute little thing. Oh, I've got 5 people living in my head and I switch between them voluntarily and we have conversations about how to live together. No. That is not how that works. If you were to make that claim under oath in court, you would be perjuring yourself. But they do a very good job of presenting it as if it's legitimately a condition that they have. And there's another social contagion. The mental illness spreads that way. The whole fat pride movement, same thing. Right? Now we see more and more social engineering happening at the government level. Right? The DNC is actively pursuing offering funding to people to take physical actions related to their psychological problems which they have accrued through the pseudo-voluntary engagement with the social engineering. And they're being kind of funneled into these mechanisms of psychopathy. A great example of the way some of this is happening now is the new Biden administration executive order, which is being referred to as the fact sheet. President Biden signs executive order to revitalize our nation's commitment to environmental justice for all. I hate the word justice because of the way that it's been co-opted and transformed and mutated and mutilated and abused. Mutating, mutilating, and abusing. That's basically the watch phrase of the hard left today. And what you're seeing here, I misspoke on this yesterday, by the way. I said that people under a 620 credit score will get a 1.75% discount on their mortgage, and people with a score above that, above 620, will be paying a 1% penalty. That's correct, except for the 1% penalty starts at a 680 credit score. Amusingly, the average African American in America, the average African American credit score is 677. I'm sure that's completely unrelated. But an executive order related to a commitment to environmental justice for all, and it has a direct effect on the purchasing of homes, and it seeks to prevent responsible people from purchasing homes, and it seeks to reward bad action with a discount on purchasing homes. That is pure social engineering and obviously wealth redistribution. And I could go on for hours about the dangers of wealth distribution, but I will simply say this about it. There is no case in which wealth distribution at any level does not result in the reduction of wealth at every level. Wealth redistribution is, in every case of its application without exception, destructive of wealth in total. That is especially true when the wealth redistribution is done involuntarily. So, how did we get here? Narcissism. Like I said yesterday, it's not lost on me that I am also a media producer online with an audience, a global audience, in fact. Um, our show is a little niche. We don't have the millions and millions of viewers that, say, a Steven Crowder or a Ben Shapiro do. I think we have better analysis and more intelligent takes. And I like Crowder and Shapiro. They're a little soft for my taste on political analysis. Shapiro especially is afraid to go full truth on a lot of important issues like elections. But generally they do good work. But unearned. We have a big problem with unearned high opinions of selves, right? So we've got these TikTok influencers. You know, this was the thumbnail that I ran this morning. You know, the world is on fire. There's a mushroom cloud behind her, and she's doing the look at me girl pose. And that, good God, is that illustrative of the modern condition? Go on one of these. Stay away from TikTok, guys. But even on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, there's some version of the TikTok style video. Excuse me. You know, and you'll see it's just, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. And the look at me thing has very serious negative consequences. A great example recently, we had a couple of weeks where the gym girls were a massive piece of the zeitgeist conversation. And not because of, so they were, a lot of those girls are OnlyFans producers. They produce adult entertainment, shall we say. And what they were doing at the gym, they'd go and film themselves working out, wearing the most revealing body vulgar outfits they could find, going out of their way to wear pants so tight that they may as well not have been wearing them at all, and then going out of their way to, they weren't working out, right? They weren't doing legitimate physical exercises. They were working themselves into lewd, arousing poses, and then pitching a temper tantrum and trying to get people canceled and even arrested while they're shooting videos. And Grandmaster this season asks, "Hi, may I ask you a question to this topic?" Please do, but keep in mind that we're running short on time, so I will try to answer, and I do have time to hang out a little bit today, so we'll see how that works out. But do please ask the question. But the result with the look at me girls in the gym recently, all of a sudden we started seeing videos where some of these, and some of them weren't even obviously look at me girls. They were just women in the gym, got too much weight on a bench press and got trapped. Right? Got the bar trapped on their neck, choking, and nobody wanted to help them. Nobody would walk over and help them. Right? In a culture where increasingly we see women say, "I don't need no man to hold the door for me," we increasingly see stories like New York subways where a woman is raped. And I don't mean, I'm not using that word in the diminished, exaggerated, and ridiculous way that the lefties use it to say, "Oh, well, oh God, he did what? Yeah, totally against my consent. He asked me if I wanted to go get a cup of coffee with him, but he smelled bad. Oh, girl, you need to call the police. Shut the fuck up." But stories in just in the last few weeks, a woman was raped on the subway train, and people just stood there and watched it. The founder of, I think it was the founder of Cash App, just recently was murdered. And People just stood there and watched it, just watched it happen. Because they're scared to death that if they get involved, and this is part of the social engineering, they're scared to death that if they get involved, it will go badly for them. So that is one of the many and varied and very predictable results of these social contagions. Right? America already has a problem with obesity. Right? Obesity is already one of the leading comorbidities in deaths in America. And now we have people like Lizzo actively engaged in promoting obesity as a positive lifestyle. Right? What Lizzo is doing is explicitly malicious. She is intentionally causing harm to people. Right? Right, the whole healthy at any size movement, for example. How is that not medical misinformation? I mean, I'm a big boy. I get it. My heart is in danger because I'm a big old boy. And I work hard to try and keep myself from getting fatter. And then I see people like Lizzo. Oh no, you go, girl. 600-pound life. Get it. These are the serious and ever-present dangers of social contagions. And what's worse, as I've described with things like New York implementing a new law where they're going to examine your social media to make the determination on whether or not you get to purchase a firearm or have a license to carry a firearm, right? The environmental justice program from Joe Biden, all of the things like that, the high degree of probability that this show, what I'm talking about right now, will be actively deranked to prevent people from watching it. Which, by the way, I see you guys on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I see all you guys watching on all these different platforms, and I appreciate the hell out of that. Share. Hit that share button, and I hope you guys all notice when I publish the edited version of this two-part video that I did yesterday and today. I hope to God that you'll share that to try and overcome the algorithmic delisting, de-ranking, de-boosting of this program. So what can you do? Well, you can do that, right? My show, obviously, because, hell yeah. Sergeant Major says environmental justice executive order will go to the Supreme Court. I agree wholeheartedly. He and I had a conversation about this the other day, yesterday, in fact, and the only thing I'm not certain of is whether or not the Supreme Court will move fast enough to solve that problem before it does serious harm. And I frankly have my doubts on that because of the way that Supreme Court sessions work and the time that it will take for that executive order to end up in front of the Supreme Court. It'll probably be a year and a half to 2 years before they're actually hearing cases on it. I think it's more likely that whoever beats Joe Biden, and that's probably going to be Donald Trump in 2024, will simply unexecutive order it. I think that's the more likely case there, just because of the amount of time involved. Damn it, old man, you broke my train of thought. I forgot where I was there. And I don't think I'm going to get it back. What can you do? That's where I was. What can you do? Okay. Share. That's probably the number one thing you can do. is to engage in social engineering. This is a case of using the weapons of the enemy and putting them into practice, right? Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. He may be a monster. He may be a monster who enabled monsters to do great harm. But I'll grant, the man was essentially the Sun Tzu of political activism. Read Rules for Radicals. Take the lessons from it. Share this show and all the other. Hey, Crowder, Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Tim Pool, those guys, Michael Malice, they've got big audiences, but they still get deboosted, deranked, and deplatformed. Share their shit too. You know, there is little more useful you can do than to spread the message. Last night, I saw that Danny's watching. I tried to call into the TPS report last night, and I missed them, and then they were off on another topic. One of the things that Alex addressed briefly last night when they were talking about Tucker Carlson leaving Fox News, which may be what Cameron and I we'll either talk about it tomorrow or Thursday. But anyway, Tucker's going to end up on Rumble. And Alex said that Rumble is a bit of an echo chamber right now, and he's not wrong. To a point, he's not wrong. But the echo chamber, as long as it's okay to spend time in the echo chamber, as long as you spend equal or greater time outside of the echo chamber. But here, for example, most of you watching right now, you're not likely to have your minds changed. You didn't come here to have your minds changed. You came here to hear somebody intelligent speak on topics that you find interesting or concerning. And I like to think that I do a pretty good job of explaining things and getting into the more complex stuff, right? Your average conservative, rather than having a complex and deep understanding of policy and the political landscape, has a solid moral, ethical, and principled foundation on which they stand, right? Your average conservative is working hard and too damn busy to read as much news as I do and spend time actively thinking about policy, politics, and the direction of the country. Instead, you have a basic set of, let's be real, ideologies, but your ideology is rooted in physical reality, in moral foundation, in an ethical commitment to individual liberty and responsibility, and to a likelihood of a high degree, in a Christian or Judeo-Christian rooted moral system. So without having that, you do not have to have a complex understanding of policy and politic to say, now hold on a minute, that's a little boy, and you want to cut his wee-wee off. That's bad. Right? You have that moral and intellectual position. You don't have to ask questions about complex political philosophies to say, now hold on a minute. You went and got yourself pregnant. That's a baby. You have a responsibility, not a choice. You're already pregnant. You already made your choice. Your choice was to take a high risk for a reward, an emotional reward, a physical reward, etc. Ma says my dubbing is way off. Well, I can't fix it now, so we'll just have to hope it works itself out in the end, Mom. You made a choice. Being pregnant is not a choice. Getting pregnant is a choice. Being pregnant is a responsibility. Right? So for the conservatives out there who watch this show, being in the echo chamber is fine, as long as it's not all the time. I know that I am preaching to the choir. But that's because the choir needs to be educated. The preacher preaches to the choir, and the choir recruits to the flock. The congregation isn't just there to hear what the preacher has to say. They are there to learn from the preacher how to speak to the masses. The sergeant trains the specialist trains the PFC, etc. Right? So I know that one of the biggest appeals and draws on my show is that I can take the complex political information and I can help you guys who understand what your positions are from a moral perspective and a basic principled perspective. And I can help you understand how to make arguments, informed, intelligent arguments, to support the positions that you understand morally, that your basic moral, ethic, and intellectual heuristics are able to select correctly from a myriad of options. You can walk into the chip aisle and be paralyzed by your options. You got 40 foot of brands and you got a dozen different brands, and they all make variations of the same individual flavors. And you can stand there and lose your damn mind trying to say, what do I want? What do I want? Right? An overabundance of choices can be paralyzing. But if before you walk in there, you know, I'm having cheeseburgers tonight and I want barbecue potato chips with them. Now your intellectual heuristics will automatically reduce the number of choices down to a set that share that commonality. And then you're just asking yourself the question, do I want kettle cooked, classic, or ridged? Now you've just used the magic of heuristic. The other chips don't exist for the purposes of the decision-making process. That's the power of heuristics, right? So your heuristic brain is able to look at the 97 genders that New York State affirms and recognizes legally and say, nope, that's an innie, that's an outie, and that's all there is. You're heuristically programmed to do it that way because contra-reality is destructive to your actual reality. You have a biological, evolutionary imperative to understand and recognize the dangers of these social contagions, especially those like an intentional ignorance of the sexual dichotomy of the mammalian beast, the inherent necessity of that for the propagation of the species, for that to be undermined by a social contagion, you may as well be sterilizing the population with an illicit pharmaceutical product. So, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it right there. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I will try to be funny again tomorrow. We love you, and we will see you in the morning.